them all come and go, I lay back watching. The rappers that was hot, they albums are flopping. I'm still repping the town where them youngins ain't boxing. The youngins are popping and names are dropping.
They screaming D-Block like they ready to die today. I clip hood, rest of the clip for holiday. And Jada gon' hate us till his ass buried. But Yonkers want no more drama, ass married.
Tryna finish you tryna finish your project. Got me Hollywood Spots Attitude Project. Bringing it back for poverty. We want monopoly for properties. The property, we about to be in 93.
For all y'all, Matt cooked this beef. That Lost Kiss took speaks for all y'all. Man, they all bras. I got something fresh out the box. Instead to tempt me, I let them all off.
Shout out to Don doing life behind that murder case. Spit to make the motivate. Shady be the murder, tryna beat attempted murder. Rest in peace to all the soldiers. We ain't got another soul to take.
Blood and blood out like American made. Slug and slugs out your tear. Your throwback jersey. I throw back straight, you throw back curves. I throw back K's, you throw back words. Let them know before they face us. Put them little nines and them eights up. Mad spit 4 pounds, hit us whole place up. And that's all over a pay cut.
Cut at you haters. J Hood play G and be a depth, homie, just like Jada.
Young Chris and Neef Buck, also known as the Young Gunz, is a two-man rap group from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania that's mainly known for their state property and Roc-A-Fella ties. Back in the early 2000s, hip-hop was going through a very interesting transition from the 90s, similar to what's happening in the game as we speak. Back then, the lyrics you sung and hooks you made were still important, as we were nowhere close to the melodic sound of today being popular. It was also an era where groups, specifically duos, were still seen throughout the game, and the Young Gunz were thought to be next up. Jay-Z, who was already a star in his own right, but trying to strengthen the Roc-A-Fella ship, decided to embark on newer territory, and he couldn't have found one better than Philadelphia, where he swept up the best the city had to offer and made them state property. Some would say it's the reason he even gained the street respect he did outside of New York. The first was Beanie Sigel, then followed Freeway, Oskino and Sparks, Petey Crack, and most interestingly, the Young Gunz, who were different in that they represented the younger Philadelphia that had their own street ties with a little more fun and energy to them. Being teenagers when they were signed, it wasn't expected they'd knock it out the park on their first single, until that's exactly what they did with Can't Stop Won't Stop in 2003 that was nominated for a Grammy. They had the youth, the backing of one of the best rappers of all time in Jay-Z, and being signed to The Roc. And also, they could actually rap, especially young Chris, who recently Beanie Sigel went on record interviewed by Fat Joe and put him in his top 5 of all time. With all that, things didn't exactly take off for them, and here are 3 reasons why. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Ash, get it. Chris and Neef, who were friends since around 12 years old, were signed to The Roc after a mutual friend named Stevie J took them to rap for Biggs, Jay-Z, and Dame Dash, where they were signed on the spot. Although signed and placed under the umbrella of the machine, things didn't come easy as they went through a 3-year artist development program and also waiting their turn as so many acts on the label were bubbling at the same time. I decided to write this story to showcase a part of what made Roc-A-Fella so special in those days, but also because the Young Gunz is the perfect example of having all the right ingredients for success, but because of issues out of your control in the music industry, things can still not play out as expected, and this can be the road it all goes down. Stunt number 1, left out to dry. The Roc-A-Fella breakup. An interesting piece of time in hip-hop that shaped the direction of the entire industry's future in one way or another. With so many artists tied to it, it's interesting to see how their careers were affected by the split, whether good or bad. The Young Gunz as a group to me was arguably affected the most because they were right at the beginning of their ascension, and then right in the middle of it, they were faced with a choice of which side to take. Jay-Z and Dame Dash, along with Biggs, were all friends before the music that had similar dreams of taking over the rap game, so came together to form a dynasty of a label that was a one-stop shop for your interests of artists. But around 2004-2005, they were unable to come to terms as a business and decided to part ways. There was a lot of disrespect thrown towards Jay-Z from all sides, including the fans that wanted to see the machine continue to rise. Diss tracks, interview subliminals, and more, while Jay-Z stayed quiet and moved on from what was into his new Roc Nation endeavors. But what about the Young Gunz? They had just dropped their first album titled Tough Love in 2002 behind the smash hit Can't Stop Won't Stop that debuted at number 3 on the Billboard charts and sold 120,000 copies in the first week. Chris and Neef's life had changed, but the changes wouldn't stop there. They were everywhere performing their new album and radio hit and on tours across the world with Jay-Z, all while working on a quick follow-up album called Brothers from Another, set to release early 2005. By then, Jay-Z was the president of Def Jam and heavily pushing for the album's success. Unlike the success of their first, this one didn't do the numbers expected, only selling around 70,000 copies in its first week. But the Young Gunz were still touring, still making money off both albums, when later that year, the Roc-A-Fella Split became real and left Chris and Neef, who originally opted to stay with Jay-Z and not move on with Dame Dash, out to dry. Also, a big part of this was State Property's leader Beanie Sigel, who was locked up at the time of the split, didn't take lightly that none of his guys came to visit him in prison except for Oskino. Now to not move on with him and Dame Dash left him disappointed as he put the entire group on hold. That included the Young Gunz and was pretty much the end of their spark they started with. Stunt number 2, consistency. One thing easily taken for granted when signed or taken under any wing in life is the work you have to put in on your own in order to become and see continued success. Roc-A-Fella, after it was broken into pieces, still had the clout and connections the artists under its previous umbrella could use if so chose to further their careers, with the example of artists like Kanye West and the Diplomats, specifically Cameron. Kanye, who was also on his second album when the split happened, continued moving as normal and only became greater, and today is considered one of the best hip-hop artists and musicians ever. But the Young Gunz, who once again were brought on at such a young age, may not have yet understood how to move without everything laid out for them with steps to follow along the way. With a hold on everything State Property, the Young Gunz went on a hiatus, releasing mixtapes here and there, with young Chris plotting his attempts to go solo, as many thought he had the potential to possibly become a star on his own. He began with releases called the Network Series and signed with Division I and Rico Love, distributed by Universal. In 2010, the reintroduction by Young Chris was released but never took off as planned, and an album under the label never materialized. Neef Bucks, who always felt he was the black sheep in State Property, fell back from the spotlight but continued releasing mixtapes here and there under his own label. He and Chris were different in that Chris saw himself as a rapper and had a better understanding of how the game worked. For instance, when Dame encouraged both to always stay around in the studio because that's how you get on big features on a very busy label, Chris took heed to that, and Neef couldn't adjust to hanging around guys he didn't feel comfortable with. It left young Chris on his own to represent the group and caused them to rise in the game more consistently than Neef through features with Beanie Sigel and working with Jay-Z directly. After the breakup of Roc-A-Fella and State Property, the music from the Young Gunz wasn't consistent in amount nor quality, and fans began to lose interest. Stunt number 3, times changed. Along with the loss of interest, times had simply began to change in the rap industry, and artists that didn't have that changeability or who weren't already stamped around 2007 were left behind. The game was no longer about baggy jeans, long platinum chains, jerseys, and where lyrics mattered most. It was now the introduction of melody, fashion rap, and style led by Kanye West and Lil Wayne. Later on, the Drakes of the world further softened the sound until raps about hustling on the block and street drama were obsolete. After 2006, the Young Gunz, who were built to be the new young street kids with real street ties, didn't adjust and fit the criteria of the new age in hip-hop, and as the years went by, they've been forgotten with all the newer acts coming out more and more. Young Chris can still be seen here and there dropping a freestyle or releasing new music, while Neef Buck continues to move on his own beat and drop music solo here and there as well, both back underground. All in all, I'm sure the story of the Young Gunz is a lot deeper than we on the outside looking in can understand. But for these reasons, in my opinion, their growth was stunted when they could have been one of the biggest duos in hip-hop of the early to mid-2000s. Salute to both, they still played a huge role in shaping my taste of music, and I do appreciate that. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.